a little bit like Jan and me. You sometimes think you're going to swear off the evening news because the headlines are so depressing. Anybody like that? If it bleeds, it leads, and it's dark and that. Isn't it great that we have an exception to that, and he's right here with us today. Bobby Lewis's book is called Finding Joy Beyond the Headlines. He's a 3-time Emmy Award-winning television reporter with a decade of local news experience. And he finds joy. Now, Bobby, you grew up here. You moved around. You lived in Kentucky and some other places, but your grandparents, come on up. Bobby's going to take the first 7 minutes of the sermon. Your grandparents were here in this church, weren't they?
Yeah, my grandma still is. She sings in the choir.
Your grandma sings in this...
Marion Sleppy is my grandmother, and my grandfather played piano for 50 years in this church, Bob Sleppy.
Wow.
Remember Bob
Isn't that cool?
Just really cool. In fact, if I look
familiar...
Hold it closer. If I look familiar, it's because 1985 I was baby Jesus, 4 months old right there. So I have been here a long time. Please don't tell people baby Jesus showed up today in a polo shirt at church. People look at you funny. Thank you for having me, first of all.
Sure.
I've gotten a chance to do a lot of cool things in my life since being 4 months old on the stage. I've traveled around a bunch of different places. I wanted to do local TV when I was really young. I knew right away that was something that would be fun for me. I wanted to do sports, because I wasn't good enough to play sports. So I wanted to go to all the games and get paid, so I put on a tie and wanted to be a sports reporter. And I got to do that in Louisiana and Oklahoma, and I came back here and was hired by Channel 10, the CBS station here, 2012 to do sports. And it was a lot of fun, got to do a lot of cool things, and then I got rerouted a little bit. They came to me and said, we don't need 3 sports reporters. It's just not something that's important enough right now. And so we want you to keep doing news. Would you like to do news? And I was like, oh no, I don't want to do news at all, because it's exactly what you just said. A lot of the times you show up and you don't know what you're doing that morning, and 10 o'clock rolls around and they say, oh, a kid got hit by a bus, go. Where's the joy in that, right? You turn on the headlines at 5 o'clock and, oh, there's a hurricane, 10 people just died today in North Carolina. Where's the joy in that? A lot of times the way that we consume our information now comes through cell phones, it comes through news, it comes through newspapers or internet, and rarely the information that's fed to you is uplifting. Very rarely, I would say. I would say you have to hunt really hard to find the joy. You don't have to look very hard to find the bad stuff. In fact, the bad stuff is going to find you. It'll find you anywhere, too. Just 2 weeks ago, my wife and I were sitting in church, the church that we attend near our home in Safety Harbor, and my phone started dinging. And normally, it doesn't do that in church. I'll turn the sound down so it doesn't interrupt anybody. But it started dinging because there was an Amber Alert. There was a child that was missing. It was a 2-year-old. And what made it really tough for us is the 2-year-old that was missing eventually 2 days later was found dead in Largo, and that 2-year-old was once fostered by a family we know from our church.
Wow.
So the bad news is going to find you. It'll even find you sitting in the church service. So bad news doesn't stop. So you think about bad news and what is bad news and where does it come from? I have a new title now as author. I never thought I'd be an author, but I got this new title. In Acts, you'll hear that Jesus is called the author of life. I think that if we stretch the definition of author a little bit, we'll come to the conclusion that Satan is the author of bad news. We hear 1 Peter 5:8 says that he prowls around like a lion looking for someone to devour. I did a little research on lions. Lions are really good hunters, but they can only hunt in a certain way. They're ambush hunters. If anyone has a cat, and they've ever watched their cat in the back porch try to catch a lizard or try to catch a mouse, they'll never face them head on. They'll always find a way to sneak up behind their prey. A lion does the same thing. If a lion can see its prey, and the prey can see the lion will not attack because the prey sees how close the enemy is getting, so the prey can escape. Lions aren't fast enough to chase down a zebra. They're not fast enough to chase down a gazelle. They can run fast in short spurts, but they have no stamina. So if you think of the devil as a lion who's looking around to prowl after you, the author of bad news, and the bad news is coming after you, getting closer and closer without you knowing it. It's sneaking up behind you at all times. You can see how badly we need to run away from that. But how do you get away from the bad news when it's constantly coming at you and you don't know where it's coming from? And the answer for that is to run away from bad news by chasing the good news.
Good news.
And I think that the place to start with that is a verse that I really fell in love with when I was going through this book in Psalms. I'm going to read it to you. It's Psalm 16:11. It says, "You will show me the way of life, granting me the joy of your presence. We all want joy. I don't know anyone in the room that doesn't want joy. I think we all want to be uplifted during the day. We want to have sustainable happiness. That's probably a better definition for joy. Regular happiness could be, the Bucks won last week, we're happy. They lose today, now we're not so happy, Happiness is circumstantial. If you want to have joy, you have to find it from a never-ending source, and we see here in this verse that it comes from the joy of his presence. So if we want joy, it's found in God's presence, which is great. But you got all this bad news coming at you like an avalanche all the time, so how are we going to escape that and find the joy of our presence? Well, we back up 3 verses, just 3 verses earlier. Psalm 16:8 says, I know the Lord is always with me. I will not be shaken, for he is right beside me. So the joy that you're looking for is found in his presence, and his presence is right beside you all the time. So even though you've got all this bad news coming at you, even when you're sitting in church sometimes, or you go to work and you get this alert on your cell phone, oh man, 10 people dead in a car crash on the Howard Franklin. Oh my goodness, we've got an Amber Alert, we've got a senior missing. We've got all these terrible things happening. Someone said this in politics. Someone, is having all these terrible things go on in their life. These headlines just don't stop. But we know that the joy that we're searching for is available to us in his presence, which is closer than your shadow. It's right here at all times. I think for me, the opportunity to write this book was one that I would not have taken if left up to my own choice. I got 2 kids. I've got a wife. She's very pretty. I have to take her out to dinner all the time. I'm too busy. I didn't have time to write a book. Here it is. About a year and a half ago, we were on vacation, sitting on the porch. There are no deadlines. I don't have to have a story done for TV at 5 o'clock every day. I'm just relaxing. And I get this very real tug on my heart. I wouldn't say I heard God audibly, but I definitely felt it. He said, you need to write about this. I thought, God, you know my schedule. I don't have time to write anything. I don't have time to write. And I really felt sincerely, you need to write about this. My role at the TV station now is no longer sports. I've been doing a segment at Channel 10 now called On the Road, a collection of feel-good stories. It's uplifting content. It's stuff that hopefully will sustain us past the headlines. All the stuff that you're going to hear about first. All the stuff that you don't want to hear about. All the stuff that's chasing you down. But I get 2 minutes a day to tell an uplifting story. And I thought to myself, if this makes me feel good, if this provides joy for me during the week, maybe other people are going to find joy from this. And so I collected 28 stories of real people that live within an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a year that were on my television segment. Not the ones that I probably liked the most, but the ones that exemplified God the most. And I broke them up into 7 chapters. There's chapters on love and joy and giving, thankfulness, blessing, ambition, perseverance. And within those chapters, 4 stories each of real people who have gone through tragedy or gone through something terrible in their life, the loss of a loved one, horrible diagnosis. It goes on and on. But somehow, God showed up in their mess and did an incredible 180 for them and put them back on track to where they could see him moving in their life, which is really great. You mentioned the bricks that bond earlier with the little kids. Adam Smick is the gentleman's name. Adam Smick was deployed. He served our country for 20 years in the Navy. You miss a lot of your kids growing up in 20 years, right? He'd come back. He told a story to me off camera. He comes back home, and he runs up to see his son, who's 3 years old, and the kid cried and ran away because he didn't recognize his dad. I think that makes him feel, Serving his country. He's doing what he has to do to provide for his family, and his kids don't even know who he is. So he thought, Legos, of course, right? Legos. He brought Legos home every time he came home from deployment so he could spend an hour, 2, 3 hours putting together Legos with his kids, not because he loved the toys, but because it forced them to spend time together and get to know each other again. It built that bond back that they lost over all those months of deployment. And so at the end of his time of duty, he retired and he said, I'm going to open a Lego shop with my kids. And now they work together and that bond is stronger than ever. It's just one of the stories. I encourage you to pick one up if you really want to be filled with joy. I know that joy is available. I see it every day, and I think you'll see it too. Check it out. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bobby. Wow.